Well, in a way, we're going back to square one today. Some of you were on hand, 18 months ago when we had our first heart to heart session, and we were in the, throes of the pandemic, which we are again. And we, should, and we're dealing with a lot of deep emotions, and I feel like we are again. I'm wearing my red shirt because every time I have something planned for the talk, and then in the morning sitting, the Holy Spirit gives me a better idea. I try to put on the red shirt. It's a kind of Pentecost event when my best laid plans are put aside by something better. And what I was feeling today as I sat, was just the overall feeling of this group the last couple times, and also just the whole quantum reality we're all living with. Um, and that is very much like when we started. It's almost like a loop around to where people are feeling that sense of heaviness and overwhelm, a pretty big overwhelm. And we also are aware, because of our communications, we're aware of what's going on so much in the world now, that can add to the overwhelm. So I thought we'd I have a couple of nice quotes here, and then I thought we'd take we go back to just practicing a little Tonglen together, because I think it might be helpful. Uh, and I'll give you some options on that. I think most everybody here might have some sense of that, but I'll also do a little guiding through it. And you have the option, if you're not ready for Tonglen today, or perhaps you're new enough to not know about this, you can always email me after and I'll fill you in. But you can just do a regular meditation too. I'll be doing a little spoken guidance, but when we start, you can turn your volume way down so I won't bug you. My wife has learned how to tune me out without the apparatus, so I'm sure you can do this. But here's a couple of quotes from three people that have faced everything that we're facing, uh, and managed to navigate it. So it's nice to have people, like in this area was settled by Boone. Well, settled by the natives first, of course, but the settlers came in. Boone led them through the Cumberland Pass, and so it's great to have pioneers, guys who have dealt with this sometimes centuries ago, and can deal with it, can sort of point the way. Well, this is from Merton, of course, who's one of our favorite pioneers around here. Did a real short one. He said, inexorably, life moves on toward crisis and mystery. Yeah, listen to the guy. He said, inexorably. I mean, it's just, there's no avoiding it. Inexorably, like glaciers move inexorably. Inexorably, life moves on towards crisis and mystery. Well, we're in so many crises right now, but life seems to do that. It takes people, and really the planet and the whole cosmos moves through crisis and mystery. And it's in a crisis that we're really formed. In challenges, we are healed and formed and developed in crises, in challenge. When we're in the middle of it, we want to get out of it. Life moves on towards crisis, and you don't ever want to forget, because this is training for mystics here. So you don't ever want to forget, in a kind of training for mystics, that you're training with living in a mysterious cosmos, a big mystery. Might be the best word for, best word for the G word, if you have trouble with the word God, is that we're living with great mystery. The second quote is by Joanna Macy, who is still alive, beautiful woman. I think she's in her 90s now, and she just took on the whole climate crisis decades ago, and knew that part of the problem was the overwhelming damage that's been done and the fear about that. And so she says something interesting here. She said, maybe the song that is to be sung, though through us, that maybe the song that is to be sung through us is the most beautiful requiem for an irreplaceable planet. Or maybe it's a song of joyous rebirth as we create a new culture that doesn't destroy its world. Interesting, she's looking, these are two possibilities that are always waving on her, and she's holding them both into one thing. So maybe the song that's be sung through us is the most beautiful requiem for an irreplaceable planet. Or maybe it's a song of joyous rebirth as we create a new culture that doesn't destroy its world. I mean, you got to really, I think maybe you have woken up to the fact that the culture we're living in and the culture around the planet in various places is sort of nutty, like lethal, because we're destroying the world we're in. Doesn't make any difference how much money you got at some point. That's the thing that hasn't sunk in for some folks. If you destroy the planet, where are you gonna put your summer home? So that's she works primarily with the depression of not just the environment, but also just the world events. They can get you down. And if you weren't sort of down by it, you're not paying attention, so she said you really have to work with your own feeling of wanting to shut down with the whole thing or feeling overwhelmed. So maybe it's a requiem, or maybe it's like ode to joy. Because if we could ever create a culture that wasn't built on destroying the planet, wow, that would be great. Hopefully that's where we're headed. So she's a woman, though, who says, got to be prepared to hold it all the light, all the dark. That's what mystics do. That's what people who that's the left brain wants. That's what my left brain wants. My ego wants only the love, but to be able to hold the both. Yeah. Now the brain can't do it. Just it's not fit for it. But this thing that all cultures, indigenous and contemplative cultures, call the heart, that's big enough to do it, and that's actually the place to do it. And this last one's a couple of quick ones from Rumi, a guy who knew about all this in the 13th century. The cure for the pain is in the pain. That's something you don't hear much, but the cure for the pain is in the pain. You have to go into it somehow. I want to go the 10 directions away from it. That's where my ego wants to go, and most people, this other one is interesting too. He says there's a snake that guards every treasure. There's a snake that guards every treasure. Kiss the snake to discover the treasure. It's a classic Rumi line. There's a snake that guards every treasure. That was an old medieval, around his time, they would put like snakes in there so keep people out from grave robbing, I guess. There's a snake that guards every treasure. Kiss the snake to discover the treasure. These are radical pioneers in this work of transformation. It's you'll find the transformation that we're all looking for. Sooner or later, this lifetime or the next or 10 lifetimes now, we're looking to become who we're meant to be. And that is a mystery, as one of my good friends pointed out yesterday. Who are you meant to be? Who's your true self? And what would it become that? It's never what we think it is. The thinker isn't big enough. You're as much a mystery as the whole cosmos, and so is your true self. But by doing this kind of work, somehow we grow into it. We grow into it. and it's slow work. Um, uh, some of you know this story. It was one of my favorites when they're, oh, gee, what's his name? Oh, brain fog here. A famous actor is a Tibetan. He's a Tibetan. Oh, Richard Gere. Yeah, Richard Gere is a Tibetan practitioner and still makes movies. And but he works a lot for Tibet, the Tibet cause. And he has been interviewed by Tricycle magazine. And the guy was moody about the whole thing. Actors trying to be Buddhist practitioners. And he said, well, what's your practice? And he said, well, I meditate in the morning about an hour, and then, I do whatever I need the rest of the day. And the guy said, well, do you really think an hour is adequate to become enlightened? And Gare just said, Gare had the Tibetans have a long view, and that's the advantage of the Tibetans. They know that you got lifetimes here. And he said, well, probably not in this lifetime, but he says, I'm satisfied that I got the ball rolling in the right direction. And so that idea that we got to complete this whole journey of, even in a lifetime, the Tibetans say, relax here, relax, get a good practice, stick with it, and then forget monitoring yourself. Just be satisfied you got a good practice that opens you up to the mystery every day. Do what you can, of course, and if you can do some intensives, great, that's all to the good. But if you have a basic practice that you're sound, just relax and just do it. And then you'll be changing as you go along. It'll help you deal with these things. My first teacher, Suzuki, never mentioned the word enlightenment. And but students kept going after him. And because he didn't want to set up a goal, you might as well just try to make $200 million. If your goal is enlightenment, he would say this is not a goal thing. Goals are up here, you see. So he never talked about enlightenment or Kensho, these Zen terms that everybody's going after. So somebody said they kept asking him, when they had Q&A, and they said to Roshi, what is enlightenment? Because he never talked about it. They were reading these other books, and he said, enlightenment is to stop complaining. And I thought that was a good one too. We're always complaining. We're not quite there. As I wrote about exiling the bitch. So yeah, just to have these practices and to practice them and to have a real leverage kind of thing, like to be able to join like this group, even just once a week to, as somebody said yesterday, because I was doing to be here with, there's 12 of us there with because, I always feel like such an oddball. I always feel like, I feel like a little odd doing this practice because nobody else is doing it. Well, that's one of the great advantages of being here with this group, and to practice together, and to do and to learn these practices. And now Tonglen is one of the pinnacle practices in all of spirituality, for my money. And the minute, the second we got hit by this car, airbags came up. It was black, and then the airbags came down. I saw I was alive, and I saw Pam was alive, and it was a lot going on. It was very confusing, but that Tonglen just sort of started. Because I practice it formally a lot. And it just sort of started, and Pam was all upset. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I said, no, it's all right, honey. Let's just get out of the car. You're on the, but I would start doing that breathing for her. And then we got her out of the car, and then noticed the people in the other car. So I was doing like dual Tonglen. I don't think you ever think of doing that. I never used to, but when you practice it formally, like we're going to do, and all of a sudden it kicked in on automatic. And that was a really good thing, because it was a very confusing thing. And at least there was one person here. It made me calm to do it for these guys, you see. That's the interesting thing. Somebody once said, Prayers don't change God, they change you. And that's a very interesting thing about these practices. You're doing them, Tonglen, you're really doing it for somebody who's in pain and discomfort. You know, you start with yourself, of course, but then even if you're doing it for somebody else or group of people like, Afghan women or the people in Haiti, the interesting thing is the effect it has on you and how it just comes up when you need it. That was really a sort of, I felt a little weird feeling happy about that. But I was happy that, boy, it just came out and I could do it. I knew how to do it. So that's why when we do a formal practice, the more you do that periodically to remind you even to do the practice, well, then all of a sudden you realize you can start to do it. But most of the time it's on the fly like that. See, the formal practice allows you to practice on the fly. So for our 20 minutes today, where we usually just, drop into just uh, a formal meditation, which is just emptiness. You're just dropping down into I like to say, into the cave of the heart, your deepest consciousness, and just being there. There's nothing to do there. You're just going to a deeper level. We'll still do that. We'll do that at the front end. It'll be a little bit like an Oreo thing. We'll do 5 minutes of just going into just regular meditation, which is a good way to prepare for Tonglen. And then I'll just sort of come out of the silence a little bit. And if you want to do the Tonglen, which is Tonglen really means just sending and receiving. And so you receive the pain and discomfort of somebody else because you're aware of it, and then you send them some sense of relief, sending and receiving. And it's pretty simple. Pretty simple. You see somebody in pain and you send them some relief in whatever form, even though you don't know what's happening to somebody at the moment, but you're just breathing in anything that's bugging them, anything that's difficult for them, and sending them back some kind of relief. Okay. Um, and it rides on the breath when we do this. Just saying, I'll just sort of coach you through it, especially if you've never done it before. We may have a few new people who've never done it before. If you're interested in this, you can do it. But again, if you're not up for it today, you can just sort of, once we start the meditation, turn down your volume so I won't be interrupting you at all. And if you know how to do Tonglen, you might go on your own. But it's really good to start with about 5 minutes of just doing this, just calming down, just letting everything settle down. And so we'll have 5 minutes of silence, and then 10 minutes of doing Tonglen if you're up for it, and which I'll lead you through. And then we'll end with 5 minutes of silence. So that'll be our 20 minutes today. Okay. So if you can shift to meditation mode,